Welcome to the Love Story with Lisa channel. Today, we're bringing you a brand new story. The second miss of the Xue family. I was the second miss of the Xue family, yet I was raised by a group of servants. As soon as I learned how to walk, I also became a little servant myself, attending to the young lady, the daughter of the principal wife, Lilian Xue, serving tea, pouring water, cooking meals, washing clothes, sweeping the courtyard. Every filthy and exhausting task fell to me. Lilian Xue was a golden branch and jade leaf, while I was nothing but the foul basin beneath her, existing only to support her. She was noble, her 10 fingers never once touching spring water. As for me, from endless toil and labor, my skin had become rough and cracked like tree bark. I resembled my mother somewhat. And Madame Xue hated me for it. From time to time she would find excuses to beat me. Sometimes she even forced Lilian Xue to strike me. Lilian Xue did not dare, so Madame Xue would grab her hand and slap my face again and again with it. She thought of every possible way to bully and trample me. The more miserable I was, the happier she became. Whenever Madame Xue tormented me, my father saw everything, yet he said nothing. He knew he had wronged her and had no words to defend himself. From the time I was small until I grew up, he rarely paid any attention to me. There was only one time, when the Xue family hired a tutor for Lilian Xue. My father came to find me and said, "If you do not wish to waste your life away, then from today onward, you will study alongside Lilian. Whatever she learns, you will learn the same. You must not fall behind her in the slightest." I did not understand what good it was for him to say such things to me. I was the child of a courtesan. Even the carriage driver in the household could shout at me. What path could possibly exist for someone like me? There were too many things I did not understand. What I understood least of all was this: since my father loved Madame Xue so much, why had he seduced my mother? Since he never intended to acknowledge me as his daughter, why had he not simply allowed Madame Xue to strangle me to death? He let me live, yet gave me a life filled with resentment. Even though I did not understand, I still obeyed him. While serving Lilian Xue she studied. I secretly learned alongside her, memorizing characters and reading books. She had precious brushes, ink, paper, and inkstones. I had only a pair of eyes and a pair of ears, yet I learned far faster than she ever did. Whenever I watched Lilian Xue get scolded by Master Liang for writing characters incorrectly, I would secretly think to myself, Lilian Xue is truly foolish. But heaven was unfair like that. That foolish Lilian Xue was the treasured daughter of a noble family, while I was merely her maid. I did not even dare let others know that I could read. One afternoon when I was 5 years old, I was serving Lilian Xue as usual. She was reading while I ground ink beside her. Master Liang had taught many new poems that day. Lilian Xue lowered her head and copied them down. She copied until evening and still had not finished. After Master Liang left, she continued writing. I waited so long that I grew restless and distracted, glancing out into the courtyard to watch sparrows pecking at food. When I turned back, Lilian Xue was no longer copying poems. The table was covered with sheets of paper, each filled with large characters. "Young miss, what are you writing?" I asked casually out of boredom. She lifted her head and looked at me. "I was thinking," she said, "everyone has a name. You should have one too. Calling you slave girl all the time sounds awful." She picked up a sheet of paper and spoke earnestly. I thought about it for a long time. "I think the name Huayu sounds the best. From now on, your name will be Jade Xue. What do you think?" I stood there stunned for a long time, my heart pounding wildly. She was Lilian. How could I dare be Jade? Golden branches and jade leaves were meant to be a pair by heaven's design. But Lillian Xue was the moon in the sky, while I was the basin on the ground. If Madame Xue found out, I would surely lose my life. I snatched the paper and tore it to pieces. Somehow, tears began streaming down my face. "Don't be so disgusting," I snapped at her. "Who asked you to give me a name? My name is Slave Girl. Do you hear me? I already have a name. I am not a Xue. I do not belong to the Xue family. Don't you dare name me." Lillian Xue froze in shock. Tears immediately rolled down her cheeks. "I didn't mean it like that. If you don't like it, then forget it." That was the first time I had ever acted so impulsively. And in all those years, it was also the only time I cried, not because of pain, but because of humiliation. Thinking back later, perhaps it was because I had been trampled by the Xue family for so long that I refused to accept even the smallest kindness from them. Fate had never favored me, not even that time. Misfortune found me quickly afterward. I did not know when Madame Xue had returned, but when she saw Lillian Xue crying, she immediately ordered people to drag me away. "You wretched little slave! Who gave you the nerve to bully the young miss? Today I will skin you alive." Two old maids forced me to the ground, pulled down my trousers, and whipped me fiercely. Lillian Xue cried in terror. "Mother, she didn't bully me. Mother, please don't beat her." Madame Xue glared at her viciously, her gaze almost devouring her. "Are you defending her? Do you want to plead for her?" In truth, Madame Xue knew perfectly well that I could never bully Lillian Xue. She only wanted an excuse to beat me. She simply refused to let me live in peace. Terrified by Madame Xue's gaze, Lillian Xue swallowed her sobs and quickly changed her words. "What I meant was, she deserves the beating. Slave Girl was disobedient. She should be punished. But mother must take care of your health. Don't let anger harm your body." Only then did Madame Xue look satisfied. She snatched the whip from the old nurse and threw it to Lillian Xue. "You beat her." Trembling, Lillian Xue picked up the whip and slowly walked toward me. Gritting her teeth, she struck my backside hard. "Who told you not to listen? Who told you not to listen?" She cried as she beat me, but she was weak, and the blows carried little strength. Madame Xue was not satisfied and ordered the old nurse beside her to take over. The old woman whipped me mercilessly. Only when my flesh was torn open and blood blurred everything did Madame Xue finally leave with the others. I lay sprawled across the cold floor, tears falling from time to time. After a while, I heard that my father had returned home. A servant told him that Slave Girl had been beaten and was lying in the second courtyard. At that moment, I still held a tiny hope for my father. Inside my heart I screamed again and again, "Father, save me. Please save me." But he did not come. He merely gave a quiet did not even glance at me, and walked away. Only then did I finally understand. In this world, there was no one I could rely on. After my father left, I lay sprawled on the ground, blood flowing everywhere, stripped of even the smallest shred of dignity. It was not until nightfall that old Nurse Chen, the old wet nurse who stayed with me, finally came. She brought a thin blanket, wrapped me in it like a bundle of rotten rags, and carried me away. On the way back she sighed and said, "Slave Girl, why did you provoke her? Madame Xue is no longer the madam she used to be. She has gone mad." I knew that already. Ever since my father had brought my mother into the household, Madame Xue had gone mad. But I had not provoked her. I had done nothing wrong. The only mistake I had made was being born from the wrong womb, reincarnated into the wrong life. I hated my father. I hated his hypocrisy and cowardice. I hated Madame Xue for her cruelty. I even hated Lillian Xue. Hated how painfully she had struck me. That night, after the old maids in the room had fallen asleep, I lay awake with my eyes wide open. My entire body burned with pain. I wanted to run away. I wanted to leave the Xue family forever, but when I crawled as far as the door, I gave up. Outside the world was not peaceful. In recent years famine had spread everywhere. People were starving so badly that they had begun to eat one another. If I ran out there, I would only become meat on someone else's chopping board. Yet I believed that heaven had brought me into this world for a reason. I was not meant to die so easily. So I turned back. I did not want to die. I had to live. As long as I lived, there was hope. As long as I lived, there would still be a chance to find a path forward. After that beating, I learned how to stay silent. I learned how to endure humiliation. I learned how to flatter others. Whenever Madame Xue wanted to strike me, I would step forward and present my face for her to slap. After she finished beating me, I would even kneel and kowtow to thank her. Perhaps because I had become too easy to bully and it was no longer amusing, or perhaps because at the end of that same year my father slipped into the water and drowned. From then on, Madame Xue rarely paid attention to me and almost never beat me again. When I turned 16, Lillian Xue had already grown into a stunning beauty. A grown man must marry, a grown woman must wed. Lillian Xue's beauty was famous throughout the capital. Matchmakers came in endless waves, one group today, another tomorrow, nearly breaking the threshold of our gates. Yet Madame Xue was extremely picky. She rejected every proposal again and again, determined to find the very best son-in-law among the best. As for my marriage, naturally, no one worried about that, nor did I want anyone deciding my future for me, because there was already someone in my heart. It was Adrian Shen, the heir of the Prince of Nanyang's residence. Heir Adrian Shen was 19 that year, handsome beyond compare and renowned throughout the capital. But the reason I liked him was not because of his looks. It was because when I was 15, I had gone into the streets to buy rouge and cosmetics for Lillian Xue. On my way back, I nearly got trampled by a runaway horse. He was the one who saved me. He did not despise my filthy appearance, nor did he look down on my lowly status. With hands as delicate as carved jade, he helped me to my feet. Then he gave me a magnolia hairpin. He personally placed it into my messy hair bun and told me gently not to cry anymore and to hurry home. From that moment on, Heir Adrian Shen became the person hidden deep within my heart. He was graceful, kind-hearted, handsome. Everything about him was good. There was only one thing that was not good. His status was far too noble. Someone like him could never be with someone like me. My status was too low. I could never possess the heir. I could not even keep the magnolia hairpin he had given me. The day I returned home, Madame Xue discovered it immediately. She snatched the magnolia hairpin from my hands and demanded to know where I had gotten it. I did not dare mention the heir, so I lied and said I had picked it up. Madame Xue did not hesitate. She tucked the hairpin into her sleeve. "Something this precious, and you say you just picked it up?" She sneered. "If I find out you stole it from somewhere, you will not end well." Just like that, she stole the magnolia hairpin from me. She never returned it. I hated her. But that hatred meant nothing to her. After all, I had always hated her. Losing the magnolia hairpin was merely a drop in the ocean. "Come here. Grind the ink for me." At noon, Lillian Xue called for me to attend her while she studied. After speaking, she turned and walked away without even looking back, knowing I would certainly follow. The Xue family had hired a female tutor to teach Lillian Xue painting. Today they were painting portraits of beauties in the waterside pavilion. Even after the tutor left, Lillian Xue continued painting. Her hands were slender and graceful. her face delicate. Bathed in the glow of the setting sun, she seemed to carry the very charm of the beauty she was painting. She was very beautiful, but in my eyes, I was not inferior to her. In fact, I did not think myself inferior to anyone. I was only a little less fortunate. If I had even a bit of luck, I too could rise into the heavens. Lilian Xue seemed to notice me looking at her. She lifted her head, and our gazes met, calmly. I looked away. She also turned her head aside. Neither of us spoke. It was not only I who had learned silence at the age of 5. She had learned it too. After a while, Nanny Wang, Madame Xue's attendant, came striding over. She held a whip in her hand and burst in angrily, shouting, "You wretched slave! Have you learned to be lazy now? I told you to wash the clothes, and you didn't go. Are you ignoring my orders?" In truth, no one had ever told me to wash clothes that day. It did not take much thinking to guess that Nanny Wang had forgotten her duties and was afraid Madame Xue would blame her, so she came to push the fault onto me. But I did not say a single word in explanation. The Xue residence was not a place where reason mattered. The power to judge right and wrong was not in my hands. The more I argued, the more I would suffer, so I lowered my head and remained silent. Allowing the whip to lash across my body again and again, Lilian Xue watched silently as Nanny Wang beat me. After a long while, she finally spoke in a calm voice. Her tone was gentle, and no one could tell whether she was in a good mood or a bad one. "Have you finished beating her?" "What?" Nanny Wang did not understand and stopped mid-swing. Lilian Xue glanced at the blood covering my hands and said lightly, "I still have many tasks for her to do. If you beat her into this state, who will work for me?" Lilian Xue had always seemed mild-tempered, yet the fleeting look in her eyes made even Nanny Wang shiver. For a moment, she could not read the young lady's intentions. Swallowing nervously, she forced an awkward laugh. "Oh dear, how foolish of me. I got carried away in anger and forgot that this lowly slave is still serving you. Young Mississippi Madame Xue has many matters waiting for me. Young miss, I shall take my leave first." She put away the whip and, as she left, did not forget to warn me, "Don't forget your task. Do you hear me?" I responded silently and returned to grinding ink for Lilian Xue. Lilian Xue, however, had lost interest. She tossed the brush aside, stood up, and refused to paint any further. I could only gather her painting tools and follow her back to her room. The other maids washed her hands while I stood quietly in the corner, putting away her brushes and ink. After escorting Lilian Xue back to her chambers, I took advantage of the fading daylight to wash clothes. In winter the water was scarce. The well water in the Xue residence had to be used sparingly, so I carried the laundry to the river outside. There were several other women washing clothes by the river as well. When they recognized me, they began whispering among themselves. They all knew who I was, the daughter of a courtesan from the Xue family. Their voices were full of mockery. A courtesan's child deserves this kind of life. I had heard such words since childhood and had long grown used to them. To me, it was nothing more than dogs barking. Without saying a word, I continued washing the clothes. The river water was icy cold. Before long, my hands became numb, completely losing feeling. I lowered my head expressionlessly and continued washing. This one belonged to Lilian Xue. This one belonged to Madame Xue. Their clothes were intricate and exquisitely made. A single garment took months to finish. If not for washing them, I would never have touched such fine clothing in my entire life. When would I ever be able to wear beautiful clothes of my own? Sometimes I thought about it. I was not inferior to anyone. Should I not also have a beautiful set of clothes to wear? Hey, let me tell you something. But don't spread it around, all right? This matter is kept very secret in the Prince of Nanyang's residence. My family only found out by accident. While I was lost in my thoughts, the whispers of women nearby drifted into my ears. It concerned the Prince of Nanyang's residence. My hands continued working. But my ears quietly listened. I heard the woman say, "I heard that Adrian Shen went to Yangzhou recently. Every night he was indulging in the pleasure houses. He fought another man over a courtesan and was beaten half to death. They say one of his eyes was even blinded." The prince was furious and locked him inside a small courtyard in the northern residence. He only allows someone to bring him one meal a day and leaves him there to fend for himself. What? Is that really true? I never expected Adrian Shen to be that kind of man. He always looked like such an upright gentleman. "I'm telling you," another woman said knowingly, "it's exactly those people who look clean and proper who are the most indecent. Golden on the outside, rotten on the inside. Who knows? Maybe he didn't just get beaten, maybe he even caught some filthy disease. Otherwise, why would the prince be so furious?" Every word struck my ears like thunder. My entire body froze. Adrian Shen had always been upright and self-respecting, a man as pure as jade. How could someone like him possibly indulge in pleasure houses or fight others over courtesans? I hurriedly rinsed the clothes in a careless rush, slapped them against the water once, stuffed them into the basket, and left the riverside. I knew where the northern residence of the Prince of Nanyang was located. Ever since the heir had saved me, I had secretly paid attention to news about the prince's household. Not only did I know the location of the northern residence, even the name of the old gatekeeper of the prince's mansion was known to me. Avoiding the crowds, I made my way to the northern residence. It was originally a side compound used to house servants of the prince's estate. Now it stood empty and desolate. Half of the main gate hung crookedly from its hinges, as though it might fall at any moment. I slipped inside through the broken doorway and pushed open door after door. Only then did I discover the heir inside a small room in the rear courtyard. There were no windows in the room. It was dark and suffocating. Cobwebs covered the beams, and the thick smell of medicine filled the air so strongly it made one's nose ache. The heir lay unconscious on a small bed. His face was covered with bruises and wounds. A strip of white cloth was wrapped around his eyes. He did not move at all, only occasionally releasing faint cold breaths from his nose. My eyes reddened. I crouched beside the bed and reached out to touch him. Before this, I had never dared imagine that one day I could stand so close to him. Being able to look at him from afar had already been my greatest fortune, let alone touching him. But now he was right before me. Quiet. Like a sleeping child, my fingertips brushed against his face. They trembled slightly. His skin was so cold, the weather was freezing. He must have been chilled to the bone, and with such severe wounds covering his body. How had he endured these past few days? Perhaps sensing a trace of warmth, the unconscious heir stirred slightly. He grasped my hand instinctively, searching for warmth. I hesitated for a moment. Then I decisively removed my outer garment, slipped beneath the blanket, and wrapped my arms around him, using my body to warm him. The sudden warmth made him react like a starving man. He pulled me tightly into his arms. His thin, icy hands gripped my waist, as if he wanted to knead me into his own body. The scorching heat between his legs pressed against my thigh. My entire body went numb, trembling faintly. Following the movement, I buried my head against his chest, listening as his heartbeat gradually steadied beneath my ear. The entire courtyard was silent. In this small corner of the world, there was only the two of us. I closed my eyes and eventually drifted into sleep. When I woke up, I did not know when the night had fallen. Through the crack of the door, a thin ray of moonlight shone in, casting its pale glow across the cold, empty room. I lifted my head and looked at the heir. His face was truly beautiful. Skin as white as snow, brows refined, eyes bright. Even the scars scattered across his face could not diminish his beauty in the slightest. But his eyes, those eyes that had once been so elegant and precious, how could they be ruined? My eyes reddened again with pain and sorrow as I reached out to touch him. The heir had awakened as well. His breathing was weak as he asked quietly, "Who are you?" Startled, I lowered my voice. I am a maid from the prince's residence." His head shifted slightly, as though looking toward the emptiness before him. "What is your name?" I fell silent for a moment. Only then did I realize that I did not even have a proper name of my own. After thinking for a long time, I said, "My name is Huayu." I had lied. I had never believed myself inferior to anyone. But before him, I did not want to be the Shui family's slave girl. The heir sounded slightly doubtful. "Huayu. I've never heard that name among the maids of the residence." "My status is low," I replied softly. "It's normal that your heirship hasn't heard of me." He struggled to half sit up and reached out to touch my face. I was wearing only a thin undergarment, light as paper. In the cold night wind, my body trembled faintly. "Who sent you here?" he suddenly asked. I did not understand why he would ask such a question. Hurriedly, I tried to explain. "No one sent me. I only heard others say that your heirship was ill, so I came here myself. To take care of you." He frowned slightly. "Oh? And what are they saying outside?" I hesitated. My voice grew smaller and smaller. "They say that in Yangzhou your heirship frequented pleasure houses. They say you fought someone over a courtesan and were beaten badly. And they also say you caught a venereal disease." The moment the words left my mouth, I regretted them. Hearing such rumors would surely pain him. But when I raised my head to look at him, I found that his expression was calm, as though everything had already been expected. The heir came back to himself and suddenly smiled at me. There was a hint of teasing in that smile. "You heard all that, and you still dared to come take care of me? Don't you find it dirty?" The man who saved me from beneath a horse's hooves, how could he be dirty? I could not understand why he would use such cruel words to wound himself. My heart ached, and my eyes reddened again. I don't believe a single word of those rumors. In my heart, your heirship is as pure as ice. The cleanest person in this world. He seemed stunned, as if he had never expected me to say such a thing. The smile faded from his face. "Do you know that I have already been cast out by the prince's residence?" he said quietly. "I have nothing left. If you follow me, you will gain nothing." "I don't seek anything," I replied. "Whether your heirship is the prince's heir or a beggar on the street makes no difference to me. I only want to take care of you. Once you recover, I will leave on my own. I will never trouble you." For a long time, he said nothing. Then he sighed softly. "Why must you go this far?" "I am willing." He would never know that he had once saved my life. When I returned to the Shui residence, the sky was nearly dawn. The back gate of the mansion had already opened. An old woman heading to the market carried a basket and walked out. When she saw me, she simply assumed I had spent the entire night washing clothes and did not suspect anything. Just like that, I walked back inside. I passed many people along the way, yet not a single person paid attention to me. None of them would ever know that the weak and easily bullied slave girl had just done something earth-shaking. That entire day, the air lingered constantly in my thoughts. When I needed dough, I seemed to see the shape of his brows and eyes upon the flour. I worried endlessly. afraid he would be cold, afraid he would be lonely. I tried to suppress the chaotic thoughts in my heart and focus on my work, telling myself not to think about him anymore. But my eyes kept drifting toward the direction of the northern residence. My soul seemed to fly there on its own. The restlessness inside my heart became unbearable. After night fell, I could endure the torment no longer. Taking advantage of everyone being fast asleep, I slipped out again. When I pushed the door open, the heir was having a nightmare. He was breathing rapidly, his brows tightly knitted as if bound by something invisible. His entire body trembled in pain. Heir. I grabbed his hand, trying to wake him, but suddenly he seized my throat and pinned me down onto the bed. Who is it? Veins bulged across his forehead like a wounded beast, terrified and ferocious at the same time. I could barely breathe. Tears streamed from the corners of my eyes as I clutched his hands and forced out a few broken words. Heir. It's me. Kwayu. Kwayu. He froze. At last he remembered who I was. His breathing gradually calmed, and suddenly he collapsed against me. So it's you. He let out a faint sigh. It's me. I did not know what he had experienced that made him so terrified even in sleep. I shifted slightly, wanting to help him pull the blanket over himself. But he held me tightly instead. His voice was very soft, exhausted beyond measure. Don't go. Stay with me a little longer. I won't go, your airship. Tonight I won't go anywhere. I only wanted to cover you with the blanket. You must be very cold. Yet he kept murmuring, don't go. It seemed he had not fully awakened from the nightmare. Helpless, I stretched out my arm and pulled the blanket up, covering his back. After a while, he finally calmed down. Still holding me, he murmured, I'm sorry. I frightened you just now. It's all right, your airship. You only had a nightmare. Are you hurt? No. I'm fine. That's good. He relaxed and then gave a faint, self-mocking smile. I've fallen so low that everyone avoids me now. The only person who came to see me is just a maid I've never even noticed before. I buried my face against his chest, my voice very soft, so soft it was almost a whisper. It's not that I've never noticed you, I whispered softly. You just didn't know it. You once saved me. Perhaps the heir heard it, perhaps he did not. He leaned his head against my neck and murmured dreamily, when dawn comes. Will you leave again? Yes. Then. Will you come see me every day? I will. I paused for a moment before adding quietly, when your airship recovers, I won't come anymore. He fell silent. After a moment, he tightened his arms around me. Don't go. For a moment, I could not respond. I thought he was only speaking out of weakness, seeking something to lean on. Once he recovered, he would realize that a mere maid like me was nothing special. I knew my place, and yet I still followed his words and promised him, all right. I won't go. From that day on, I secretly slipped out every night to see the heir. I stayed with him in that shabby little house, bringing him food, applying medicine to his wounds, and warming his bed. He never asked why I only appeared in the middle of the night. He never asked where I went or what I did during the day. One day I asked him, why don't you ask why I never come during the day? He smiled, trusting me completely. I won't ask. When you want to tell me, you will. See, this was always how the heir was. Even a casual sentence from him could stir a person's heart. Sometimes I secretly wished that time would move a little slower, so that I could stay by his side a little longer. But gatherings must always end in parting. The time I had stolen to possess the heir would eventually come to an end. And that day finally arrived. when I went to the northern residence again, I saw a carriage from the prince's household parked outside. The courtyard was brightly lit with lanterns, filled with the noise of people. I knew immediately, the prince's household had come to take the heir back. He was the only son of the Prince of Nanyang. The prince would never truly abandon him. Once he returned to the residence, he would still be the heir. But what about me? My status would never change. The prince had already been furious over rumors of the heir's debauchery. If he discovered my existence, if he learned that my mother was a courtesan from Yangzhou, how could he possibly tolerate me? The threshold of the prince's residence was far too high. It was not a place someone like me could ever reach. The future of the heir was not something I had the right to interfere with. If I failed to understand when to advance and when to retreat, the prince's household had 1,000 ways to make someone like me disappear. So I did not step forward. I quietly turned around and went home. The next day, as usual, I went to Lillian Shue's room to clean. I found her sitting by the window, watching sparrows hopping along the branches. Her expression was gloomy. I did not know why she looked like that, and I did not ask. I only guessed that perhaps Madame Shue had arranged a marriage for her that she did not like. But I could not know for certain. These days my thoughts were completely occupied with the heir. I knew nothing about what was happening inside the household. After finishing the cleaning, I withdrew from the room. Just outside the door, I saw the maid who usually combed Lillian Shue's hair hiding behind the west wing, crying bitterly. Carrying my broom, I walked over. "Sister Hannah Huang, what's wrong?" Hannah Huang looked up at me, her face soaked with tears. Her mouth trembled, and she cried even harder, though she spoke in a very low voice. "Afraid someone might hear, the young miss. She's been selected to enter the palace. Madame Shue wants me to accompany her into the palace. But I'm already betrothed to fifth brother Wu. We were supposed to marry next year. If I go into the palace now, I'll probably become an old maid there and never be able to leave again." The current emperor was the same age as my father. Lillian Shue was still in the bloom of youth, yet she would have to serve an old man. No wonder she looked so sorrowful. "Then why don't you beg Madame Shue?" I asked. Hannah Huang shook her head. "I've served the young miss for 10 years. I know her better than anyone. Madame Shue won't agree. Besides, among the sisters in this household, who doesn't have someone they love? Who would willingly go in my place?" She covered her mouth and cried miserably. But in my heart, an idea slowly began to form. Entering the palace meant never leaving for the rest of one's life. But at least there would be no worries about food or clothing. No one could bully me as they pleased. If I stayed in the Shue residence, who knew when Madame Shue might marry me off to some lowly servant? I would give birth to a crowd of little slaves and waste my entire life. For Hannah Huang, entering the palace was a bottomless abyss. But for me, it was an opportunity. Besides, the heir would soon return to the prince's residence. He no longer needed my care. After a long silence, I took Hannah Huang's hand and said, "I will enter the palace in your place." The day before Lillian Shue was to enter the palace, I secretly smeared raw yam onto Hannah Huang's body. By noon, her entire body broke out in red rashes, her skin swollen and inflamed. Madame Shue flew into a rage, scolding the servants. "Hannah Huang is in this condition. She can't possibly enter the palace now. Who will go in her place?" The other maids hesitated nervously, none daring to answer. Madame Shue pointed at them and cursed angrily, seeing that the time was right. I stepped forward from the crowd. Kneeling before Madame Shue, I said, "I am willing to enter the palace in Sister Hannah's place." The courtyard fell so silent that one could hear a pin drop. Madame Shue was stunned. "You?" "Yes, madam." She looked me up and down in surprise. Everyone else is crying and refusing to go. Why are you volunteering? I lowered my eyes and spoke slowly. The young miss has treated me well. I am willing to follow her for the rest of my life. When I said those words, Lillian Xue was standing nearby. Madame Xue's expression was unreadable, but Lillian Xue seemed slightly tense. After hesitating for a moment, she said, "Mother, Hannah Huang has fallen ill. And the other maids are useless. Slave girl has served me since childhood and understands my habits the best. In our current situation, this is the only solution." Madame Xue had never intended to let me go, but now she had no better option. After hearing Lillian Xue's words, she could only nod reluctantly. It seems there's no other choice. Then she looked at me with obvious disgust and said, "Give her a decent set of clothes. She looks like a ragged beggar. Don't let her embarrass the Xue family." With that, she flicked her sleeve and walked away. After Madame Xue walked far away, Lillian Xue rarely showed such excitement. She said softly, "Mother never intended to let you follow me into the palace. I didn't dare bring it up either. But by sheer coincidence, Hannah Huang fell ill. It must be heaven's will. Someone happened to pass by." Immediately her expression changed, becoming cold and distant again. "Following me into the palace is your good fortune. From now on you must be absolutely loyal, fulfill your duties, and obey me properly." I knew exactly what she was doing. She was only afraid Madame Xue might notice her being too kind to me and scold her for it. I had no mood to listen to her. My mind was filled with only one thought. The heir. I wanted to see him one last time. That night, I went to the northern residence again. That evening, Heir Adrian Shen had not followed the people from the prince's household when they came earlier. But tonight they came again, and even Prince Shen of Nanyang personally arrived to bring him back. Yet he still refused to leave with them. I waited outside for a very long time. Only after everyone had finally dispersed did I slip inside. The heir was not in the small house this time. He was in the study. The study was in complete disarray. Books and objects were scattered everywhere, clear signs of a fierce argument. When I entered, I saw him sitting in a grand chair. His expression dark and heavy. He heard my footsteps. His lifeless eyes slowly turned toward me. "Huayu?" "It's me," I said. I walked up to him and glanced at the pile of books on the floor. "Why didn't you go back with them?" "I'm not going back." He suddenly grabbed my wrist and pulled me into his arms, lifting me onto his lap. In a low voice he said, "I'll stay here. I'll marry you. We'll live here together." "That's nonsense." "It's not nonsense." He buried his face in the crook of my neck and rubbed against me lightly. "Wouldn't that be nice?" His words stirred my heart deeply. But I knew he would return to the prince's residence. I had heard everything outside earlier. The prince had said that Princess Consort Shen missed her son so much that she had fallen ill. Although the heir did not get along with his father, he was a kind and filial man. He could never ignore the princess consort's condition. I understood all of this, yet I still said, yes. The heir lifted his head slightly and looked into the empty air, a gentle smile touching his lips. "Then tonight. Don't leave. Tomorrow I'll take you to meet the princess consort. All right?" My heart rippled. I could hear the sincerity in his voice. But he did not know what kind of person I was. If he knew, he would never say such things. If the princess consort learned that he wanted to marry a woman like me, she would probably try to kill herself. Even so, I still pressed my lips into a smile. "Yes. You've agreed," he said. The heir hugged me tightly, as if afraid I might run away. I laughed softly in his arms. Drowsily he asked, "Huayu, will my father and mother like you?" He hesitated for a moment, then tightened his arms around me even more. "They will. They'll definitely like you." Which meant, they wouldn't, in truth. He also understood how great the resistance would be if he brought a maid like me back to the prince's residence. But it didn't matter. I had never planned to follow him back there anyway. These days I had stolen a brief time with him, a fleeting moment in which I could claim him as mine. That alone was enough. I had no regrets. Late that night, the air slept deeply. I had added a small amount of mandala flour into his tea earlier. For a short time, he would not wake up. I quietly rose from the bed. Under the pale moonlight, I looked at him one last time. I traced his brows, his lips, engraving them into a painting inside my memory. In this lifetime, we would likely never meet again. If we happened to see each other in dreams in the future, that would count as our reunion. I gently pushed open the door and slipped away. I never looked back. He would never know who I truly was. In his memory, there would only remain a very ordinary girl, a simple, pure symbol. For me, that was already enough. Madame Shui gave me a set of half-new clothes. They were garments someone else had worn and discarded. They did not fit well, but they were serviceable. Just like that, I followed Lillian Shui and was sent into the imperial palace. The palace walls were extremely high. Before, I had only ever seen them from afar, but standing beneath the red walls for the first time, I realized just how tall and thick they truly were, like a silent mountain that radiated power without anger. When I first entered the palace, everything felt new to me. The eunuchs had skin even fairer than women. The palace maids wore delicate, beautiful makeup. Even the decorative beasts on the rooftops gleamed brilliantly in the sunlight. When my father was young, he had once served as a strategist to the emperor and followed him in conquering the realm. But he died young. Because of that, Emperor Li Sun treated Lillian Shui with particular favor. The moment she entered the palace, she was granted the title of Lady Lillian Shui. Another concubine, Lady Wen, entered the palace at the same time and was arranged to live with her in Qixia Palace. The palace maid who came to receive us was named Lydia Lin. She was polite and attentive. Even to me, she addressed me respectfully as elder sister. She took the bundle from my hands and asked, "Elder sister, what is your name?" I hesitated for a moment and glanced at Lillian Shui. "My name is Huayu." Lillian Shui froze slightly, clearly surprised. She looked at me, then quickly looked away so I would not notice. But the corner of her mouth curved upward ever so slightly. "Yes," she repeated my words. "Her name is Huayu." Lydia Lin nodded. "Then I'll call you Sister Yu from now on." Sister Yu. It sounded pleasant. From this moment on, no one would call me slave girl anymore. I looked around at the magnificent imperial palace. It felt as though a wall inside my heart had been pushed down. Everything suddenly seemed wide and open. When we arrived at Qixia Palace, Lydia Lin brought me to the room where I would live from now on. She even came to measure my size, saying she would have clothes made for me. I asked curiously, "They make clothes for us in the palace?" "Of course," she said. "Every year the palace rewards 4 sets of clothing." Before this, I had always worn clothes discarded by others. This was the first time I would have garments of my own. I lowered my head and looked at Lydia Lin's clothing. The material was excellent, and the design was beautiful. At that time, I thought the palace was a wonderful place. But the imperial court was nothing like the beauty it displayed on the surface. Its filth was merely wrapped in a layer of sugar. Before we had even finished arranging our belongings, 2 consorts arrived at Qixia Palace. They warmly held Lillian Shui's hands, acting as intimate as sisters. One said she wanted to gift her a clever palace maid. The other said she wished to do the same. However, according to palace regulations, a Marin was only allowed 3 palace maids. Empress Li had already granted 1. Adding me, and then the 2 they wanted to give, that would make 4. One of the consorts smiled sweetly and said, "That's easy to solve." She pointed directly at me. "This girl's hands and feet are rough. She doesn't look like someone fit to serve a mistress. Why not send her away to do some coarse labor outside?" The 2 of them burst into laughter. They left Lillian Xue standing there with no place to retreat. Not only that, they were trying to plant their own people beside her. No matter how naive Lillian Xue might be, she understood what was happening. She quickly stood up, intending to refuse, but I could tell these 2 consorts were not easy opponents. If Lillian Xue offended them now, her days ahead would not be peaceful, even if, in the worst case, they could not harm Lillian Xue herself. Making someone like me disappear would be as easy as turning over a hand. I did not want to one day be walking along the road and suddenly lose my life. So before Lillian Xue could speak, I dropped to my knees. I thanked the 2 consorts. Lillian Xue stared at me, stunned. Gradually, she calmed down and understood the situation. She had only just entered the palace. Aside from the title of Marin, she possessed nothing else. This was not a situation she could fight against. Lowering her head, she forced a stiff smile and accepted the 2 palace maids. I picked up my small bundle and left Qixia Palace. Lillian Xue watched my movements. Perhaps she wanted to say something to me, but in the end, she said nothing. She only twisted her hands together, silent. Between her and me stood a mountain. That mountain was low enough for us to see into each other's hearts, yet it was also so high that no one could cross it. After a long time, Lillian Xue finally spoke. "Don't worry. I'll bring you back." I replied. Then she took out a small bundle from the bed and handed it to me. "Take this." I opened it. Inside were some pieces of silver, and hidden among them was a jade magnolia hairpin. The eunuch who came to arrange my assignment was named Ethan Xia. He was the adopted son of Chief Eunuch Gao, the chief eunuch serving before the emperor. Walking ahead of a group of people, he looked young and handsome. Unlike most eunuchs, he did not carry a feminine air. Instead, he resembled a refined scholar. Later, I heard that he had originally come from a family of scholars. The imperial palace itself had once been supervised and built under the oversight of his grandfather. But when he was 13 years old, his father committed a crime. He was implicated and sent into the palace to be castrated and become a servant. Ethan Xia took my bundle and said, "Miss Huayu, please follow me." I asked him, "Where are we going?" "The Shanggong Bureau." He pressed his lips into a smile. A small dimple appeared at the corner of his mouth, like a glimmering pool of spring water. "You are from the palace of Lady Lillian Xue, so according to reason we should take a little extra care of you. However, all the departments are already full of people. We can only send you to the imperial kitchen to do some miscellaneous work. I hope the young lady won't mind the hardship." I knew these were merely polite words, but when someone was willing to be polite to me, I appreciated it nonetheless. Ethan Xia handed me over to the steward of the imperial kitchen. Her name was Madame Yao. He gave her a few instructions before leaving to attend to his own affairs. The imperial kitchen was divided into 2 sections, the outer kitchen and the inner kitchen. The outer kitchen was responsible for preparing dishes and delivering them. Occasionally they also had to personally serve the masters of various palaces. Because they were often seen, the rewards and tips were usually plentiful, but they had to be extremely clever and careful. The slightest mistake, a minor one, would result in loss of wages. A serious one could cost them their heads. The inner kitchen, on the other hand, was much simpler. It only handled ingredients and prepared food for palace maids and eunuchs. They almost never interacted with outsiders. It was quiet, peaceful, free from disputes, a job that could guarantee a lifetime of safety. I hadn't expected that after being expelled like this, I would still be given a choice. But since I had the chance to choose, I chose the outer kitchen. The inner kitchen promised peace and safety for life, but it also meant I would never be able to lift my head for the rest of my days. It meant remaining a servant forever. I had already been a servant long enough. I did not want to continue living under the feet of others. I did not want people pointing at my nose and ordering me around anymore. Lillian Xue had a promising future because of her birth. But I could not place my hopes on her bringing me back. Since childhood, I had understood one truth. In this world, you cannot rely on anyone. Relying on others only leads to disappointment. I had to rely on myself, even if the work was bitter and exhausting. I would still find a way to live well. When I arrived at the sleeping quarters, 2 other newly arrived palace maids were arguing over the beds. They were also unlucky ones, driven out from the rooms of other noble ladies. Each of them still carried a trace of pride. Neither was willing to sleep near the doorway. I walked over, placed my bundle on the bed they both refused to take, and smiled at Madame Yao. "I'll sleep here. If you need anything during the night, I can get up immediately." Madame Yao laughed. What could I possibly need? Her gaze lingered on me. I knew she was evaluating me. Evaluating whether I was obedient, sensible, and willing to accept her authority. Whether I was someone she could command freely. At the same time, I was also evaluating her. As the steward of the kitchen, a single word from her could determine my future. I could not afford to miss this opportunity. When no one else was around, I handed her the bundle of silver that Lillian Xue had given me. "Auntie, I've only just arrived and understand nothing. I hope you will guide me more in the future. These are pastries I baked myself. Just a small token of my respect. They're not refined, so please don't dislike them." For a kitchen steward, that amount of silver was no small sum. She weighed the pouch in her hand, then smiled in satisfaction. "Well, since it's a token of sincerity, of course I'll accept it. Though I must say, these pastries of yours are far too hard, quite terrible, really. From now on, just follow me and learn properly." That meant she was willing to take me under her wing. I lowered my head and thanked her, the heavy stone in my chest finally settling. That night, after everyone had fallen asleep, I took the jade magnolia hairpin out from my robe and quietly examined it. When Lillian Xue had given this hairpin to me, she must have hoped I would say something to her. But what could I possibly say? The first half of my life had been lived beneath the resentment of the Xue family. I hated Lillian Xue. I hated her the same way I hated the whip in Madame Xue's hand. I knew that without someone wielding it, the whip would never strike me. And I also knew that Lillian Xue felt guilty toward me and had always tried to make amends. But I could not grow close to her, because her surname was Xue, because she was Madame Xue's daughter. Because that whip had truly lashed my body before. I was not that generous. Outside, the wind had risen. Cold air whistled through the broken holes in the window, making one shiver uncontrollably. I clutched my blanket tightly. Somehow, I found myself thinking of the heir again. What was he doing now? He had probably already returned to the prince's residence. Had he searched for me? If he discovered that there was no maid named Huayu in the prince's residence at all, would he resent me? If he did resent me, then so be it. At least that way, he might still remember me. I became Madame Yao's young apprentice. Occasionally she would take me along when serving the masters of various palaces. This work was not easy. The imperial harem was like a small court of its own. Women had their own politics. Everywhere here was filled with traps. Everyone possessed countless hidden schemes. Although the imperial consorts did not have the same stage as the men in the outer court to display their talents across vast lands, they had carved out their own battlefield within speech and conversation. A few simple words could pull someone from boiling waters, or kill a person without leaving a trace, and the reward for the victor was nothing more than the small amount of power and freedom that slipped through the emperor's fingers. The consorts fought one another, the servants were no less competitive. The sentence Madame Ya reminded me of most often was this: never trust anyone. She must have suffered many losses herself before offering such advice, so I guarded myself carefully at all times. I did not dare allow anyone to find fault with me, yet despite the undercurrents of struggle within the palace, there were also peaceful days. During festivals, after the masters had retired for the night, the palace maids and eunuchs would secretly organize small gatherings. Everyone in the room would sit together and cook hot pot. Our kitchen quarters had the best food. Once word spread that we were preparing a feast, no one knew how the news traveled so quickly. Everyone wanted to come and join. Those with manners would bring dishes to contribute. Those shameless enough would simply arrive with a pair of chopsticks. This time, when we cooked hot pot, Ethan Xia also came. No one knew what connections he had, but he managed to obtain a whole gene of salted venison, saying he wanted to contribute it. The fragrance was so rich that everyone crowded around him. Madame Yao teased him, "Supervisor Xia, if you have such fine goods, why bother sharing them with us? Venison like this would be wasted on people like us." Ethan Xia only smiled. "I just want some liveliness. Food isn't wasted when more people enjoy it." He lifted his foot and walked toward me with slow, graceful steps. His wide cloak swayed with each movement, carrying a faint chill in the air. I quickly set down my chopsticks and prepared to stand, but Ethan Xia raised a hand, pressing his fingertip lightly on my shoulder. He pursed his lips slightly, a smile in his eyes. No need for formality. I had no choice but to sit back down and lower my head respectfully. "Supervisor Xia. Miss you." Ethan Xia leaned slightly closer. The distance between us was neither near nor far, just enough. His voice was neither loud nor soft, only I could hear it. "Lady Lillian Xue asked me to pass along a message. She wanted to know if you are well." For a moment, I was stunned, then I quietly replied, "Please thank her for me." Ethan Xia nodded lightly and said nothing more before walking over to the eunuch's table. I held my bowl but found myself distracted. It had been a whole month since I last saw Lillian Xue. I did not know how she was doing, but since she could ask someone to deliver a message asking about me, she was probably not doing too badly. Seeing that I had not moved my chopsticks for a long time, Madame Yao picked up a piece of venison and placed it in my bowl. "You silly girl. Hurry and eat. If you keep staring like that, the meat will be gone." I snapped back to my senses and quickly cheered up, grabbing the piece of meat. While we were eating hot pot in the kitchen quarters, Emperor Li Sun had already summoned Lillian Xue to attend him that night. I learned about this the next morning. Madame Yao instructed me to prepare 4 portions of pastries. They are rewards from the emperor for the consorts who were summoned last night. Make them exquisite. But something confused me. Why are we making 4 portions? Madame Yao froze slightly and lowered her head, continuing her work without answering. Suddenly, I understood. This time, exactly 4 women had entered the palace alongside Lillian Xue. Why 4 portions? Of course, because last night the emperor had summoned all 4 of them. My scalp went numb. I could hardly believe it. Since childhood, I had always heard stories about the current emperor, how he conquered the realm, how wise and mighty he was. I never expected that after ruling the realm for only 17 years, the emperor would already lose his sharpness, indulging in luxury and debauchery, drowning himself in pleasure, and now he had done something so absurd, summoning 4 women to attend him at once. Huayu, come with me, Madame Yao said. Let's deliver Lady Lilian Shue's portion. I knew Madame Yao was taking care of me, giving me a chance to see Lilian Shue. But even if I went to see her, what good would it do? After hesitating for a moment, I nodded and followed her to Qixia Palace. The Phoenix Palanquin of Favor had just returned Lilian Shue to her palace and was preparing to leave again. I watched the eunuchs carrying the sedan chair but did not step forward. Disgust churned in my stomach. What kind of favor was this? That old emperor was truly revolting. Lilian Shue had been spoiled since childhood, proud and arrogant, after enduring such humiliation last night. I did not know how she had managed to bear it. I handed the food box to Madame Yao and waited outside the door. Lilian Shue came out wearing her night robe, her long hair falling loosely over her shoulders. Her face was pale, her eyes were empty. Supported by Lydia Lin, she walked slowly to the small table and sat down. She did not even lift her eyelids, so she did not see me. Madame Yao arranged the dishes neatly and bowed her head. Lady Lilian Shue, these are the pastries bestowed by the emperor. Please enjoy them. Thank you for your trouble, Lilian Shue replied. Her spirit was already on the verge of collapse, yet she still forced herself to hold on, maintaining the dignified bearing expected of a palace mistress. Madame Yao glanced back at me. Perhaps she wanted to ask if I had anything to say. But what could I possibly say? I lowered my head, avoiding her gaze. Madame Yao had no choice but to bow and prepare to leave. If your ladyship has no further instructions, this servant will take her leave. Lilian Shue responded weakly, like a soulless shell. She picked up her chopsticks but did not reach for any dish. I turned to follow Madame Yao out, but then I heard Lydia Lin urging her, "Your ladyship, please eat something. This is a reward personally bestowed by the emperor. No matter what, you must at least take a bite." Lydia Lin belonged to the empress's household. Naturally, she held no real loyalty toward Lilian Shue. Though her words sounded like encouragement, they carried the faint tone of a warning. In the end, I did not step outside. I had never imagined that one day I would feel pity for Lilian Shue. For many years, I had always believed fate favored her. She had status, she had dignity, she had the protection of her parents, and I had nothing. But now, she trembled there, lonely and helpless, like a fledgling bird soaked by a storm. Only then did I realize something. Fate does not favor one person forever. It merely lashes its whip at each of us equally, only at different moments. I let out a quiet sigh, then I turned back to her and bowed slightly. Lady Lilian Shue. Inside the room, the sound of chopsticks falling to the floor rang out. Lilian Shue lifted her head. When she saw me, the shattered emptiness in her eyes suddenly lit with a spark. Huayu. She stood abruptly. She was happy that I had come to see her, yet the embarrassment and humiliation she had been holding inside finally collapsed. The composure she had struggled to maintain for so long shattered in an instant. Tears burst forth like a flood. I gave a small, gentle smile. "Your ladyship. Are you well?" It was merely polite courtesy. Even though I knew she was far from well, such formalities were necessary. Lilian Shue bit her lip tightly, forcing down her emotions, then nodded, "Yes. This servant is well. Please don't worry, your ladyship." I raised my head and looked at her calmly, speaking with quiet respect. "Please take care of your health. Do not let sorrow exhaust you. If your ladyship is well, then this servant can also be well." Tears streamed down Lilian Shue's face. She looked at me and nodded helplessly. From her throat came a few strained words. "I know. I know. Today's breakfast was personally bestowed by the emperor." It shows that His Majesty values your ladyship greatly. He specifically instructed the kitchen to make it especially delicate. This servant put much effort into preparing this portion. Please taste it and see if it suits your ladyship's palate. You made it? She looked startled. Slightly flustered, then she sat down and picked up a spoon. She lifted a bowl of steamed egg custard and tasted it. Tears still streamed from her eyes, but a smile slowly appeared on her face. It's very good. Very good. That's wonderful. Since your ladyship likes it, the kitchen can also report back to His Majesty. Please take your time eating. This servant will take her leave. I bowed once more before following Madame Yao out. After I left, Lillian Xue finished every dish on the table. Soon afterward, she fell ill. Half a month later, she recovered. Someone later saw her in the imperial garden, holding the emperor's hand gently and obediently. They said the emperor favored her greatly. The proud young Miss Lillian Xue of the past had shed her arrogance. She had grown anew, learning how to follow the tides of power, and how to lower herself to please others. Lillian Xue had gained a firm foothold in the palace. As for me, I had spent 2 months in the imperial kitchen. Under Madame Yao's guidance, I had met many people and gradually learned the rules for surviving in the harem. The palace was not like the Xue household, where a bit of talent could earn recognition. Here, dragons and snakes mingled together. There was no shortage of capable people. What was rare were those who could make others feel comfortable. You could not be too clever, but you also could not be too foolish, and you could not handle responsibility. Too clever, and you would become difficult to control, provoking fear and suspicion. The best position was this: be somewhat intelligent, but never more intelligent than the one in charge. Be quick-witted and sensible. Help others relieve their boredom, and occasionally offer a well-timed joke to make them laugh. Relying on my ability to play the fool while hiding my sharpness, and a mouth skilled at pleasing others, I was soon noticed by the palace authorities. Before long, I was promoted to head cook. No longer was I the small apprentice following behind Madame Yao. Instead, I became one of the 4 head cooks, holding a small measure of authority in the kitchen. Madame Yao was very pleased. She was proud to have trained such a capable apprentice. You're luckier than I was, she told me. You're still so young. In the future, you'll surely go much further than I ever could. At first, I was happy for a few days, but gradually, that excitement faded. I began to feel bored. So what if I had become a head cook? Wasn't I still someone who had to look up to others, still someone whose head could be pressed down at any moment? What joy was there in being a servant, that day? I stood atop the palace wall, looking down at the entire imperial city. The more I thought about it, the more astonished I became. No matter how high one climbed, one was still a servant. For example, above the imperial kitchen stood the Shanggong, who held authority over us. But the Shanggong herself was still suppressed by the imperial consorts. If one was fortunate enough to become a consort, she would still be suppressed by the empress, and even the empress had to watch the emperor's mood day and night. If one day the emperor was displeased and decided to depose her, then she would be deposed. When I calculated it this way, the empress herself was merely a servant of the emperor. There was nothing interesting about that either. After thinking it over and over, I came to a sudden realization: only the emperor was not a servant. I looked toward the direction of Wandai Palace, my thoughts growing more and more entranced. Yes, only the emperor was not a servant. Only by sitting in that position could life have meaning. Unfortunately, I was only a small palace maid. I could only think such thoughts. Soon I woke from my daydreams and returned to the repetitive, dull life of a palace servant. Before I knew it, 4 months had passed since I entered the palace. Perhaps things had gone too smoothly for me. Heaven suddenly realized it had not teased this unlucky girl in quite some time, so it decided to play a joke on me. Winter passed, spring arrived, the weather changed suddenly. Noble consort Jing caught a chill and lost her appetite. I prepared a bowl of mung bean porridge and had someone deliver it. After tasting it, the noble consort praised it endlessly and specifically requested to see me. Noble consort Zheng had grown up with Emperor Li Sun as childhood companions. Although her beauty had faded with age, she still enjoyed his favor. When I arrived, I happened to run into Ethan Xia, who had come to deliver a reward from the emperor. It was a luminous pearl the size of a fist. The noble consort only glanced at it before tossing it aside. It was clear she was used to seeing such treasures and cared little for them. She waved at me. "Come here. Let me take a good look at you." I obediently knelt at her feet and lifted my head to face her. Time had already left traces on her face, yet she still retained her charm. Her almond-shaped eyes were bright and full of allure. It was not hard to imagine that in her youth she must have been a great beauty. Noble consort Jing studied my face. A flicker of surprise flashed in her eyes. Looking down at me from above, she raised her brows. "I didn't expect to find someone like this among the palace maids. What's your name?" My heart skipped a beat. "This servant's name is Huayu." Not a bad name." Her tone was faint, tinged with slight displeasure. She waved to a nearby maid. "Give her 100 taels of silver and send her away." I understood immediately why she was displeased. In the palace, when consorts who had grown older faced younger, fresher beauty, they would inevitably feel uncomfortable. Understanding her meaning, I quickly thanked her for the reward and hurried away before she could grow more irritated. But before I could leave the doorway, a shrill voice rang out from outside. "The emperor arrives." In the 4 months since entering the palace, this was the first time I had ever seen the emperor. I never expected our first meeting would be here. I quickly set the reward down and knelt flat on the ground, not daring to raise my head. The figure in golden robes entered the room and immediately pulled the noble consort into his arms. Ignoring everyone else, the two of them exchanged intimate affection. Only after that did he finally notice a palace maid kneeling on the ground. "Who is this?" Noble consort Zheng said coquettishly. "Your Majesty, this is the little head cook from the imperial kitchen." "Oh. So you're the one who cured my consort's illness. Lift your head and let me see." The voice above me sounded casual, yet carried immense pressure. My palms were slick with sweat. Slowly, I raised my head. It was the first time I saw Li Sun's face. To my surprise, he looked far younger than I had imagined. Although he was the same age as my father, he had taken good care of himself and did not appear old. He even retained traces of the handsome, romantic charm he must have possessed in his youth. Unfortunately, his indulgence in pleasure had been excessive. Dark circles lay beneath his eyes, and signs of weakness were already visible. "What's your name?" he asked. I answered calmly. "Your Majesty, this servant is called Huayu." "Huayu." He narrowed his eyes. Then he reached out and pinched my chin, toying with me casually as if I were some small object. "How is it that I've never seen you before?" I was not a fool. I understood what it meant when a man looked at a woman like that. My mind buzzed loudly. Tension spread through my body, even causing a faint ache in my stomach. A vague sense of dread crept over me. I felt that something bad was about to happen. At that moment, the noble consort walked over, her voice soft and teasing. "Your Majesty also thinks this girl is beautiful, don't you? Are you jealous, my beloved consort?" Li Sun released me and began coaxing her. "She's only a palace maid of ordinary appearance. She cannot compare to even 1/10,000th of my beloved consort." The noble consort pouted playfully. Your Majesty only knows how to say sweet things to make me happy. As she spoke, her gaze slid across my face. Suddenly, my scalp prickled with unease. Sure enough, she continued in a sweet voice while holding Li Sun's hand, this child is truly young and pretty. Even I find her pleasing to look at. She must already be of marriageable age. To remain alone and unmarried. How pitiful. Why not let me take charge today and arrange a marriage for her? Emperor Li Sun was startled. His beloved consort wanted to arrange a match for her. What is it, Your Majesty? You seem reluctant. Why would I be reluctant? Speak, my dear consort. If you wish to betroth her, to whom? The noble consort Zheng looked around with satisfaction, sweeping her gaze left and right before finally pointing at Ethan Xia. In that case, eunuch Xia will do. A handsome man and a beautiful woman, what a perfect match. To be given in marriage to a eunuch, someone incapable of sharing a husband and wife's bed. The humiliation in that arrangement did not need to be spoken aloud for everyone to understand. I hurriedly knelt and kowtowed, saying I was crude and unworthy of eunuch Xia, begging the noble consort to withdraw the imperial command. Ethan Xia also dropped to his knees. He had only come to deliver something. He had never expected to be granted a marriage. Clearly startled, he looked just as shocked as I felt, but the noble consort was determined to humiliate me. She clung to Emperor Li Sun in a coquettish manner. Your Majesty, what do you think? Emperor Li Sun glanced at me with a trace of regret. Then nodded. I think they make a fine pair. Let it be as the noble consort wishes. Just like that, because of a petty game of jealousy between lovers, they bound Ethan Xia and me together, like pairing stray dogs and cats on the street. On the way back to the steward's room, my mind felt strangely numb. Someone beside me was speaking, yet I heard nothing. I only saw her lips moving, her hair fluttering in the wind. For a moment, I felt like crying, but no tears came. All I could think was that it would have been better if I had never made that bowl of tofu pudding. If I hadn't made it, the noble consort would never have summoned me. And none of what followed would have happened. The news that I had been married off to a eunuch spread quickly. Many people along the road covered their mouths and laughed when they saw me. I had exhausted every ounce of effort just to survive as I was now, yet I was still not treated as a person, and now I had become a joke for others to mock. After all, this world was nothing more than one enormous Shui residence. No matter how capable I might be, I could never escape this five elements mountain. Someone suddenly ran after me, robes billowing in the wind. Miss Jade. Ethan Xia stopped in front of me and clasped his hands in greeting. Miss Jade, what happened today was truly a misunderstanding. Please rest assured, I will certainly find a way to ask His Majesty to withdraw the imperial decree. His expression was serious, as though he was determined to give me an answer. Before I could even respond, he hurried off in the opposite direction. But how could that possibly work? The noble consort had clearly made up her mind to corner me. How could she allow the decree to be withdrawn so easily? I sighed. Was this truly my fate? A life forever incomplete. Even after entering the palace, nothing had changed. Not long after I returned to the steward's room, people from the noble consort arrived. They watched as I packed my belongings and escorted me to Ethan Xia's quarters. Ethan Xia lived in the northern courtyard of the supervisory compound, a small courtyard with its own separate gate. He occupied only a single room in the northwest corner. The room was large but terribly empty. There was only a bed, a table, a chair, and a few scattered odds and ends. I sat quietly in a corner, staring at the cold, desolate room, unable to believe that someone actually lived here. the door was shut. Servants from the noble consort's palace hung red silk outside and placed a tray of wedding wine for passers-by to drink. The noise and commotion lasted a long time before it finally died down. It was not until nightfall that Ethan Xia returned. He pushed open the door, bringing a gust of cold wind with him, and looked at me with a hint of apology. "It's all right," I said. "I already expected it." He seemed about to say something but stopped himself. Instead, he stepped inside and clasped his hands in greeting. "Miss Jade, please rest assured. This marriage will not truly take effect. I will think of another solution. It's just that my place is rather crude, so for now you will have to endure some hardship." In truth, what other choice was there? Everyone already believed I had married him. Whether it took effect or not, it had already taken effect. What he said was only meant to assure me that if I was unwilling, he would never force me. It was his way of letting me feel at ease. After speaking, Ethan Xia dragged out an old folding screen from the corner and used it to divide the room in two. Then he pushed several chairs together to serve as his bed. But there was only one quilt in the room. I stepped inside and looked at the thin blanket before asking him, "You should take the quilt." He shook his head. "There's no need. I usually keep night watch at Qinyuan Palace. It's much colder there than this." I had nothing more to say. Ethan Xia's quilt was very thin. Fortunately, spring had already arrived, so a single thin quilt was enough. I curled up beneath it, feeling somewhat guilty. Although Ethan Xia was a eunuch, he carried himself with the bearing of a gentleman. In truth, he had done nothing wrong today. He had treated me with courtesy, while I had responded with arrogance. The more I thought about it, the more uneasy I felt. Today I had felt humiliated because I was forced to marry him. But wasn't that because, deep down, I looked down on him? His damaged body was not something he had chosen. We were both wanderers surviving in a foreign place. What right did I have to despise him? After thinking it over and over, I finally got up, took a padded jacket from my bundle, and carried it over. Ethan Xia was lying on his makeshift bed of chairs, his back to me, one arm under his head as he slept. Eunuch Xia. I handed him the jacket and smiled calmly. "The nights are cold. You should put on an extra layer." Ethan Xia froze in surprise for a moment before accepting it. "Thank you." He lowered his gaze to look at my padded jacket, and the rims of his ears slowly turned bright red. When I woke the next morning, Ethan Xia had already left. After that, he always tried to leave before I woke and return only after I had fallen asleep, carefully avoiding making me uncomfortable. Sometimes when we encountered each other and others teased him, he would immediately turn cold and scold them, then politely address me as Miss Jade. His careful consideration only made me feel even more embarrassed. At night, I even began to think about asking him to come sleep on the bed instead. After all, he was only a eunuch. What was the big deal? But I knew he would definitely refuse, so I never brought it up. Instead, after a few days, I managed to find him a new quilt so that he wouldn't have to deliberately avoid me anymore. When he held the quilt, he smiled faintly. His voice was gentle as he thanked me. From that moment on, he no longer avoided me. When he returned home, he would speak a few words to me, not too many, not too few, just enough. Sometimes he even brought back small trinkets that were rarely seen in ordinary days. If I wasn't there, he would simply place them by the bedside without mentioning it. He never made a point of telling me. He truly was a very good person. Sometimes I even thought, if I spent the rest of my life like this with him, it might not be such a bad thing. Half a month later, one morning not long after I arrived at the steward's room, someone from noble consort Zheng's palace came with an order. They specifically summoned me to bring food to her. I had no idea what the noble consort wanted again, and instinctively my heart resisted the thought. But when I entered her bedchamber, I was surprised to find that the people in her palace treated me rather politely. It seemed that this time she had not summoned me to reprimand me. That only made me more confused. Carrying the food box, I was led inside. The noble consort was reclining gracefully against the bed, sipping tea with elegance. She said nothing at first, only after I set the food down did she speak. "Huayu," she said, "I've heard you've been unhappy lately. Are you resentful toward me?" So it was still about that matter. I could not guess what she wanted to hear. I simply lowered my head and answered vaguely, "This servant would not dare." "I am not unhappy." Perhaps I was simply born with a face that looks unhappy, which causes others to misunderstand. The noble consort lifted her teacup and took a sip, gently spitting out a tea leaf. "You don't need to lie to me. I know you've suffered a grievance. But you shouldn't blame me either. Why did you go and try to seduce His Majesty, HM? I have served His Majesty for 20 years. What others call dignity and prestige mean nothing to me. They're nothing but passing clouds. All I want is His Majesty. What others do, I don't care about at all. But no one is allowed to compete with me for His Majesty." I lowered my head without looking at her, secretly astonished. Others fought for favor, fought for power. Only the noble consort fought for the heart of that lecherous tyrant, Emperor Li Sun. The noble consort set down her teacup. "When I summoned you that day, it was originally to reward you. But instead, you ended up suffering a grievance. That was my fault." I took a deep breath. Had heaven and earth turned upside down? The noble consort was actually apologizing to me, afraid it might be some kind of trap. I hurriedly knelt. "This matter was originally this servant's fault. Your ladyship saying such things truly shames me. I do not resent your ladyship at all. In truth, this servant has long admired Eunuch Xia. Being able to marry him is something I could only wish for. I should actually thank your ladyship for granting the marriage." The noble consort was clearly taken aback by my words. "You're so frightened. Look at you," she said unhappily. "Am I some kind of tiger?" She glared at me. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like and subscribe to Love Stories with Lisa for more stories. Thank you so much.